All right, I'm Josh with LDS Gold Pill Reviews, and I have here Brother Joseph. Brother Joseph, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastically. How about
I'm not
yourself?
going to call you Brother Joseph the whole time, but I was just rolled off the tongue just so perfectly.
That's fair. That's fair.
Hey, so I just want to tell the audience here, I don't remember exactly when, but you reached out to me and you were just kind of like, hey, I like your low-key approach. I've been thinking about doing something similar. I'd love to pick your brain. And I responded back to you and I was like, I'll do you one better. I will bring you on the channel because I'm really enjoying just talking to regular Latter-day Saints and picking their brain and finding out their perspectives and their stories. Because one thing that I've been finding, Joseph, is that as I've been talking to people, um, a lot of people are like, I'd like to do that, but I just don't think I have anything interesting to say, or I just don't think I have a good story to tell or whatever. And I keep telling people, I'm like, it's not true. At least I don't believe so. It's like every single person who has a testimony has something to say, is my opinion. And there are so many voices against us that I'm like trying to encourage as many people to, step up the plate and take a swing. There's really not much to lose. So what is it that made you think, well, maybe I'll start a channel, maybe there's something that I could contribute?
Well, what you just said, rang really true to me in a lot of ways. I've been thinking about, I need to, add to the positive, voices, especially when it comes to the restored gospel. This is something I believe very strongly in, very deeply. I believe we have a lot of good to offer. And so I don't want to be quiet about that. But
Yeah.
then to your point, it's like, well, what can I do that someone isn't already doing better than I could do it? Right?
Yeah.
Is there something that I can contribute and add value in a particular niche? And to be very frank, you were very supportive for me. I've been, kind of battling this for the last couple of years, and you encouraging me to say, just jump in and do it. And you know what?
Yeah.
You're right. Jump in and do it.
It's so cool because like the we just had kind of a brief conversation. I don't remember exactly how long we talked, but you started telling me a little bit about yourself. I'm like, you have a perspective, you have something to say. So Joseph, for our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well,
How long have you been a member of the church? You know, how has that gone for you? Education, career, whatever you want to get into.
sure. We can go the long story. That's fine. So I grew up in the church. I grew up really close to my extended family, so especially my grandparents on my mother's side. My grandmother was one of the most spiritual people I've ever known. Very inspired in a lot of ways. Not perfect, right? She had her flaws and everything, but just loved the woman dearly. She made a huge impact on my life. When I was about 9 years old, my parents divorced, and it was really tough for each of them. I feel like that wasn't necessarily common in the church or anything. Not that it's common now, but I think a lot of people didn't know how to react to that. And do we have to pick sides or things like that? Consequently, both of them basically stepped away from the church to some
Mm,
extent. I
yeah,
think they both still believed in everything, but were trying to find their own paths and
sure.
figure out what made sense to them and that kind of thing. I have two older sisters, and I'm about 4 years younger than the youngest of those two.
Yeah.
And so my oldest sister, she, hey, I'm going to keep going to church and everything. The middle child decided to kind of choose her own path and that kind of thing. And it was
Mhm.
left up to me to say, well, what do I want to do?
Right.
A lot of weekends I'd go spend with my grandparents. Again, my grandmother had a huge impact on me. And so I go to church with them, but it wasn't really in my word or anything. So I never got, callings, from that point. And as I grew up, it was really on me to say, well, do I want to go to church and attend this thing? Do I feel like this is right for me, or do we need to try to find my own path, or that kind of thing? I had promised my grandmother that I would serve a mission,
Yeah.
and so as it got closer and closer in high school, there was times where I wasn't super active or anything, or I just decided, what, I'm going to stay true to this promise, and I need to get my act together and
Yeah.
figure out what I actually believe and all that kind of stuff. Um, I served a mission in the Japan Sendai mission, and
Oh,
okay, so funny story there. Um, I was not a great high school student academically and everything. Uh, I'll fully admit that I didn't try as hard as I should have, et cetera, et cetera. So when
yeah,
it came to learning another language, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So when I was filling out the paperwork, when it was actually paper,
yeah,
it had a question of, how much do you want to serve foreign or learn a foreign language? I'm like zero, whatever, like the lowest amount.
right, right.
Handed the paperwork over to my mother, and I kid you not, I didn't know this until like way later on. She literally used whiteout and changed the answer, the response. I'm not even kidding. So when I got the call to Japan Sendai, I'm like, whoa, this is not what I was anticipating at all.
Grandma.
But
Oh
maybe
my
my mother
God.
wasn't so surprised.
Based. You got a based grandma is what it is. That's so funny. And
Yeah,
oh, so how'd that go when so you go on your mission, you're like, yeah, I'm not prepared to learn another language, and there you are trying to learn another language. What was that like in the MTC?
oh, it was really tough. I mean, Japanese is a tough language. I'd taken a couple of Japanese classes in high school. Like within the first day of the MTC, I was past anything I had already learned.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic language. It's very interesting. Um, I how do I even say this? The mission experience,
Mhm.
one of the many things it did for me was teach me how to love people that I don't know and who have a very different culture from me and speak a different language and are different by all these different categories, but that we're all part of the same human family and we largely have the same emotional reactions to things and the human experience can be very similar across those different cultures and languages and all that. We're very much more similar than we are different, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh,
there's a couple things I really stands out to me about your story. One is coming from a divorced family. I think even though Latter-day Saints, they do like the data shows that we have a low divorce rate, right?
right.
But it
Mhm.
does happen. And there is this kind of like, because we are such a family-oriented church, sometimes it does leave people kind of feeling left out. And I think of the way your grandma like stepped in, like when you told me that, just also, man, she sounds like a real tough lady, but it kind of reminds me of President Oak's story that he told in the last general conference. When his father passed away, a grandparent stepped in and his grandfather was like, I'm gonna be your father now, you know? And I was like, I think when he said that, I swear it's like everyone's heart and just kind of broke a little bit, you know, because like how beautiful is it? It just shows like the importance that grandparents, you know, play a role, or uncles or aunts or a bishop or a youth leader, you know, to kind of help. Because my parents are divorced as well. They divorced before I can even remember. So like I get that, and I do think it's important for other Latter-day Saints that are out there. If you know, if you know that somebody is the parents are divorced, you know that that son or daughter may need you if you are, you know, teaching mutual or Sunday school. They may look up to you that you may not even know that you are like a replacement father or mother figure. But I think that our community can kind of provide that. What do you think when you how
So going,
for you, and how do you think Latter-day Saints should deal with it when they come across it?
so it definitely helps me be more empathetic to what we might consider like non-traditional families, right? People that have, families that have gone through divorce or, a widow or widower kind of situation, or even, folks that just haven't married yet, or, all sorts of different, family kind of situations we can look at. Um, there can be an ideal, so to speak, but we should play to everybody, right? We should include everybody in every situation. That's what Christ expects of us, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. Man, so cool, so cool. That it's I think it's So when is it that you found out that your grandma went and changed that paperwork? Like when did,
So it was my mother that changed that.
oh, it was your mother who changed
Yeah.
it. Oh, okay. And then she told you afterwards, or when did she let you know?
I want to say it was like maybe after my mission or something.
I think
She
so.
fessed up or whatever, or maybe I got back and saw the paperwork. Or like, wait, what is this? Or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't remember specifically how I found out, but I was upset a little bit at first, but then I look back at my mission and be like, well, that's where I needed to be anyway. So,
Yeah.
whatever was on that paper kind of doesn't matter.
Did
Um,
did you feel after your mission, so you go on your mission, you learn the language, even though that's not, what's funny about that too, Joe, is that I come across this a lot in missionary stories. They're like, if anybody ever says the one thing I don't want to do is, or the one place I don't want to go
right.
is, that's where they end up. My older brother was like, the only place I don't want to go is I don't want to go somewhere cold. And he went to Alaska. You know, I mean, that's just I don't know what it is, but I've seen that, and yet people go and then they end up having a great time and a great experience, and they grow so much. They learn about different places and different cultures. So do you still try to hold on to that second language, or how's that going for you? I know that's tough.
Yeah, I'm really rusty. And the I think the complicated part is when native Japanese speakers come to America, they want to speak English,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's like I don't want to approach somebody and like say, "Oh, I just want to speak Japanese to you."
Right,
I don't know, it
right.
just seems a little awkward. And then
Yeah.
trying to speak with non-native speakers is awkward too, because there might be some nuances that I know that the other person doesn't know, or vice versa. It's a little awkward.
Yeah.
Um, but something in Japanese culture is senpai kohai relationship. So senpai basically means senior, and
Mhm.
kohai means junior. Is the
Yeah.
easiest way to explain it. And it's very deep in the culture. So when you have missionaries, there is definitely one of those in a companionship. One of those is the senior missionary, and one of those
Yeah.
is a junior missionary
Uh-huh.
every time, right? Very much like hierarchy, strong, if I could
Mhm.
say it that way. Um, so I once I get hit like a year, I could feel like, okay, I can actually communicate and express my ideas to some, coherent level or whatever. And I became a senior companion. And for a while, I was with this companion. It's amazing. He had spent some time in Japan before his mission, spoke and read and wrote Japanese very, very well, way
Yeah.
better than me. And we got along really well. And we're just out there doing the work, and it was a blast and everything. And I remember my mission president referred to our companionship as the machine,
Wow.
just getting things done, churning through, whatever. And it was,
Uh-huh.
fantastic. Uh, I was the district leader for a little while, and also very uncharacteristically, I had two native Japanese elders in my district. And usually, if there's a native Japanese elder, like they're going to be the district leader. So it was very odd.
Mm.
And then shortly after that, I got called. The mission president called me and said, "Hey, I've got a special assignment for you. There's an elder that is getting ready to go home soon, and he hasn't had a lot of success on his mission. I want you to be his junior companion." I was like, "You got it, boss, whatever, wherever I need to be, that's where I'm going to go." And I didn't realize how wild that was, because once I was transferred, and then all the word went out that, okay, district leader, Elder Kachuk is now junior companion. I got
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many calls from people saying, "What did you do?" Like, did you just like break the rules, or like got in trouble, or like this never
Downgraded.
happens, because of that strong sense of senpai kohai
Mm.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I think that taught me a lot of lessons. Is like the titles don't matter, and you can lead without a title or without an authoritative position. And it's really not about that.
Right.
How do I look past those kind of labels and like do the things that need to be done, get the work done, and have a good time. And I remember shortly into that companionship, I got a call from the zone leader saying, "Hey, Elder Kachuk, how come I haven't heard from you?" I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, the last person that was a companion with this guy, he called me every night, or whatever. I'm like, well, that's not necessary. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you think is going on here, but we're fine,
Yeah. Oh,
and sometimes, like, how do I say this? Okay, so I developed this later on, and I'll get into this, but I used to work in the physical security industry, and I get a lot of flack from people, whatever. But I developed this saying of, I bet I can get you to like me before you can get me to hate you,
hmm.
right? And it's like a challenge. Like if someone's going to be a pill or whatever,
Uh-huh.
guess what? Like now we're on. Like
Yeah.
and here's the game is I'm going to get you to try to like me, regardless of how much you try to get me to hate you.
What made you come up with that?
Just again, kind of challenging myself for how I relate to others.
Yeah.
People can be really difficult to deal with, and people can be having a bad day or a bad month or whatever. But largely, what I found is it's if someone's being rude to me or whatever, or difficult, it's not about me.
Mhm.
I'm just the person they're like venting to, or whatever. Um, it's about something else in their life that isn't going right,
Mm.
and they're just having trouble expressing that. And
Tell me,
so,
do you think that do you think that transfers over to interfaith dialogue? And
yeah,
have you have you done that and when you're talking to someone interfaith? I mean, you see the stuff that's online, right? Like half of my stuff
yeah.
in the comment section, right? So how do you go about that when have you come across any of that in your life and have you been able to apply that?
Yes. Um, there's a lot of different ways I can approach this. Like part of me, like when I'm commenting on YouTube and stuff or whatever, like someone makes a ridiculous comment, I'll troll them a little bit. So like I'm not perfect,
Yeah, yeah,
put
yeah.
that up front.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of times, especially if I'm in person or something, I'll focus on the similarities. Okay,
Mhm.
like hey, we both believe in Jesus Christ, right? We
Right.
we both believe in trying to be the best people we can be and showing love and inclusion and this kind of stuff. How do we build upon that?
Hmm.
Right? And then, hey, there's some little differences or whatever, but like within the entire Christian community, there's way, way more similarity than there is difference.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
hands down.
It's just
And
sometimes it's just getting people to see that. So it's like that's why I really liked that challenge. Like you said, how'd you put
yeah,
it? I can get
I
them.
I
What?
bet I can get you to like me before you can get me to hate you.
Yeah. So it's just it's like getting somebody who already has a a really rooted in opinion about you or not even about you but about your religion and about your church but then they take what they think about your religion they put it on you and now you're the church, right? And
Right.
like trying to get them to see past that and to see that it's actually a prejudice in a sense that because they're prejudging you because they don't actually know what you believe because they haven't bothered to have a conversation with you. And so when you try to have a conversation with them, and then it's like, can I get this person to to stop thinking the way they have been thinking and to connect with me? This happened recently with my older brother. My older brother had a conversation with someone, and it was somebody who was like, and this was in person, and the guy was like, "You're not a Christian, right? You're a Mormon. You're not a Christian, whatever." And my brother bore his testimony about Jesus Christ and just went in explaining everything that he believes about Jesus. And the guy like listened and was like, "Well, you're the most Christian Mormon I've ever heard of." And,
Right.
and
Thanks.
my brother's like, that's what we believe. Like, that's what we all believe. Like, we all accept the historical Jesus of Nazareth and the metaphysics stuff is a difference of opinion because it's like, it's not in scripture. We've talked about this. It's just not there. So it's like, can we at least agree that we are talking about the same historical Jesus of Nazareth, the first century man who walked around ancient Palestine, and then go from there. That we are talking about that same person. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you have to kind of break the ice a little bit. If there's a lot of tension, people coming in like just ready to swing,
Yeah.
whatever, and fight over something. Like, look, man, let me tell some jokes, or like, soften up a little bit. Like, hey, how many Jesuses do you believe there were?
Yeah,
One? Yeah,
exactly.
me too.
Yeah.
So there is no second Jesus to believe in,
Yeah.
like, or
Right.
whatever. Um, Sometimes that can help. I mean, some people will get really like they're really combative, whatever. But um, often I'll even tell people that, look, my purpose here in this conversation isn't to convince you that what I'm saying is true.
Right.
All I'm trying to do is help convince you, hopefully, that there's a rational, my belief system is rational.
Hmm.
A person can be intelligent and,
Yeah.
and everything and believe this, and there's a good reason for it. Like, you don't have to change your position, but at least grant me that.
Yeah. And I could tell from your comments and from our conversation that you have a good head on your shoulders. You've grown your knowledge on the gospel. When did that start for you? When did you be like, I'm going to dig into this in a serious level? When did it begin? How, like, what made you start doing it?
Great question, and I'm going to lead into the answering that question. So bear with me a second.
Go for
Uh,
it. Your
for a lot of my life, I felt like my testimony had to be this impenetrable wall. That whatever someone's going to throw at me, I've got to have the right exactly knowledge and scriptural reference, and if I can defend this, tooth and nail and whatever, like my testimony will be bulletproof, and no one can ever touch, my theology and that kind of stuff. I've kind of discarded that
turn.
viewpoint, and now I view it. My testimony is more like a painting, and it's unfinished, right? I'm looking at this painting, and I can add some brush strokes here and there, and as I figure things out, and I can see the bigger picture, but I haven't filled in all the gaps yet. And sometimes I even have to brush over some things that I've already painted because I have a new perspective on things, whatever.
Right.
Or
Right.
sometimes I paint a little bit on there. It's this collaborative work, and again, it's unfinished, and it's not about defending every shot or whatever. It's about how comfortable I am with the bigger picture,
Mm,
right?
I
And
like.
so it was actually I was a cousin of mine's pretty active on TikTok. He does a lot of stuff over there. He's big into psychology, and he does some apologetics and stuff like that. And he was really encouraging me to do more over there. So I was kind of watching some of his stuff. But while I was on TikTok, I started encountering Dan McClellan.
Mm,
And love him or not or whatever, people have different opinions of him, but it was really him that kind of that started me on that path of like, I want to know more, and
yeah.
not to necessarily argue about it. I just want to have a better picture of what's going on. And um, I think he does a very good job, and I think what he's doing is actually critical.
Mhm.
At least the way that I view it. I mean, Dan, if you're watching this, at some point, let's have a conversation. I'd love to get your thoughts, but here's my impression of what he's doing.
Yeah.
He is stepping aside to say, I'm not here to debate or defend my religious position,
No,
the dogma that I believe
absolutely
in or
not.
whatever. I'm going to set that aside and try to take this neutral stance to say, if we're looking at as objectively as possible, to say, what does the scholarship, what are the people that dig into this and specialize in this in the area of religion and biblical history and stuff, what do they tend to think is going on? And let me present that to you,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I agree with some of the stuff he says, and I disagree with some of the stuff he says. That's fine.
I
Um,
love his biblical, he is a legit biblical,
yeah.
like his biblical scholarship is good. He knows what he's talking about. Anytime he gives his opinion, I lose my mind. Anytime he gives his opinion, I lose his mind. But when he's talking about biblical scholarship, when he's like, let me tell you about all this, this literature or whatever, and how breaks it down for you, it's good, it's
Yeah.
solid. And I've said before, I think I mentioned before, I'm like, he is our Bart Ehrman, where it's like
Yeah, kind of.
he kind of, even though I'm not saying what Dan McCullen believes or not. I'm just saying,
Sure.
like, he speaks from like you said, that neutral position, that where he is not speaking as a Latter-day Saint or as a believer at all. He is just talking about the biblical scholarship that's out there, and he presents it in a very clear way. And
Yes.
I think we could all learn from it for sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So kind of what the message I got from him is there's a lot that I just don't know. And the scholarship might be right or wrong about certain areas, but that's the best we've got, so far. So we can take that until we learn something new. Um, but he piqued my curiosity to say, okay, what else is out there? And so I started looking out and started looking into the more apologetic kind of stuff or entertainment kind of stuff. Like it's like Word Radio
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like is great. I,
Mhm.
a big fan of like Jacob Hansen
Yeah.
and Hayden Carroll. Those guys are great too. I'd love to do collaborations with them. I love their intelligent approach, that kind of thing. So at first, that's the way I was leaning of like, okay, if I want to get involved, then I started reading a bunch of books and things, and just that approach, that desire to learn more,
Mhm.
and kind of uncovering not just here's how do I even say this? Here's what's being presented to me as the right way to interpret things,
Right.
but what's the possible out there,
Mhm.
right? Like for example, if we recognize that, hey, the Bible may have been corrupted and there's some things missing out of there, whatever. If that's our stance, okay, where's the corrupt part? Where is it? Like what does that mean?
Right.
How do I interpret that and learn something from that? Um, so like a lot of Jonah Barnes, like his books are fantastic, kind of go into the more apocryphal kind of stuff. I haven't delved into the apocryphal text myself,
Mhm.
especially, but like some of the stuff that he pauses, like that's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's really
And
interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
so, so I look at things to say, okay, I've got my core belief system, and then I've got this kind of multiple working theories model. That's what I like to think of it as. Okay, well, in this particular case, maybe it's A, maybe it's B, maybe it's C. I'm not really sure, and I don't have to know necessarily. Like
Yeah.
any of them could be right, or maybe a D option I hadn't considered. That's fine, whatever. But then if I had to put my money on it, I'll pick A.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I'm the same way actually in that I try not to like if it's not an official church doctrine, I try not to like just marry myself to a particular idea and be
Right.
like, I'm gonna die on this hill, right? Like a lot of people debate about all kinds of things in scripture or doctrines or deep doctrines, right? But it's like I want to know what's out there and be educated on it as best as I
Yeah.
can, as best of my ability, which is just mostly engaging with the literature. And there's so much good information out there now, too. There's so many good. I mean, what professor doesn't have a podcast at this point, you know? So it's like you can literally listen to college level lectures online, and that's fantastic, and it opens up the door for a lot more people to digest some of these ideas. Absolutely. When did you start? So when was that you were like you found Dan McClellan and was like, this is interesting?
Maybe 2, 3 years ago,
3 years
somewhere
ago.
around there.
And so what kind of biblical scholarship or just scriptures in general, like what kind of rabbit holes you've been going down? But those some of those books behind you.
Oh, so yeah, definitely lots of stuff. I come up with some of my own theories and stuff too. Like, do you want to go down a rabbit hole together?
Go for it. Go for
Okay.
it.
So as far as I know, no one else has posited this. This is an original, at least part of it. Um, you tell me if you think I'm crazy or not.
I will.
Okay. All right. So Adam and Eve.
Mhm.
Adam receives a garment, right? And the oral tradition would be that he handed that garment down to his posterity, and it was handed down father to son, presumably. There's a lot of oral tradition that might talk about who had that, where it went, that kind of thing. It eventually gets down to Noah, for example. Um, he is going to pass it off to one of his sons, but then Ham absconds with it, runs
Mhm.
off with it. As the story goes, it gets down to Nimrod. Nimrod is kind of ambushed by Esau, if I'm remembering this correctly. Esau gets the garment, the birthright, so to speak, and he comes back and is being chased or whatever, who knows? And then he trades that for the porridge.
Mhm.
So that garment represents priesthood authority, represents the birthright all the way from Adam.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it gets back in the kind of where it was supposed to be in the first place. Gets down to Jacob. Who does he pass it to? Joseph, right? When you read this idea that Joseph was given this coat that was really colorful, and his brothers wanted to kill him over it, I'm
Mhm.
like, come on, I'm like that doesn't quite make sense to me. There's got to be something else going on there. But the word that is translated as color also has some other translations, to my understanding, like markings or embroidery or things like that. So if we now take it the coat of many markings,
Mhm.
okay, that seems to fit more aligned with what I anticipate, Adam would have had, or maybe a representation of it, over time, if it's not the exact same garment. Okay, so if Joseph's got it, where does it go from there?
Yeah.
Okay, here's my theory.
But now it's in
Um,
Joseph's line. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Go ahead.
okay, all right. So what other artifacts or heirlooms might Joseph have that he passes down to his posterity? What do you think?
Mm, I don't know. Maybe brass plates.
Right. Okay. You're picking
Yeah.
up what I'm putting down. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So brass plates, maybe a sword.
Yeah. Maybe a sword.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if we are thinking that that's plausible,
Mhm.
that Joseph is the creator of the brass plates, or maybe a first version of it, or whatever,
Mhm.
and those come down to Laban, then it would make sense that Laban would also have the garment. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay. So when Nephi ambushes sort of Laban and beheads him in the same way that Esau took down uh, I just forgot his name, Nimrod, cuts off his head, takes his garment, right? And then for whatever reason, this armor, that Nephi puts on and then goes to Zoram, it's unique enough that Zoram thinks, oh yeah, there's no one else this could be. This has got to be Laban.
Right.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting. Now you fast forward, Nephi starts making swords based off of the sword of Laban,
Mhm.
right? But you know what never happens? They never seem to make armor based off of Laban's armor.
Mm.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. So is it more of a ceremonial kind of thing? Is it more of like a breastplate or,
Right.
something, again, that has more ceremonial kind of significance than actual combative kind of armor? I
Yeah.
don't know. And then we see that the sword of Laban is passed down, but what about his clothing? What happens to that?
Mm.
Okay. All right. So fast forward again. Okay. Joseph Smith is shown by Moroni. Here's this stone box, cement box that has these artifacts in it. And he opens it up. What's inside? Well, there's gold plates, of course, right? What else is in there though? That's not the only thing.
He's the sword of Laban.
Okay, it's all rusted and cankered and stuff. And there's a cool like symbolism there as far as like the word lasting, but the sword doesn't kind of thing. Anyway, what else?
Was the Leahona there? I think the Leahona was in there.
I believe so. What else?
What else was in there? Tell me.
Urim and Thummim.
Urim and Thummim. Right, right.
Okay, what goes with the Urim and Thummim that he found?
Oh, the breastplate. The
Okay.
breastplate.
And somehow that matches up with the Urim and Thummim, which
Yeah.
according to my main man, Don, right?
Uh-huh.
They're triangular shaped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if somehow these
Don Bradley.
triangular,
The lost
Don
160
Bradley,
pages. Mm-hmm.
hmm
Okay.
so if these somehow fit with this breastplate
Yeah.
thing, right? And they're triangular shaped, then might there be triangular shaped markings on that breastplate? Yeah, maybe. Anyway, if that breastplate that Joseph Smith was able to get a hold of was in fact a representation of perhaps the garment from Adam,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I could think of a better way to usher in the restoration of the priesthood. Like, there's the birthright, there it is.
Bro.
Now, I don't know if that's the way it went down, but man, it'd sure be cool if it was, right?
Bro. As soon as it got to Joseph, I knew it was going there. But I didn't see the breastplate connection. That's an interesting theory.
You see,
What made you even think about that?
I want to say I was reading Don Bradley's book about the lost 116 pages when
Yeah.
he started going into like that the Urim and Thummim, these stones were triangular shape, and we're, whoa, what? And they somehow fit in with the gold plates. Like think it's like blowing my mind. And I think about here's the things that were in this box, and they're all like we know exactly what those things are. Like the Urim and Thummim, like the gold plates, like these all have this history, and there's these heirlooms and stuff. And the one piece that's the odd one out is that breastplate.
Yeah.
Like what is that doing there? Like what significance does this thing have? Like what I don't understand. And maybe it was trying to remember who it was that was talking about this kind of oral tradition of Adam's garment. Maybe it was
I've heard that oral tradition
yeah,
before of the sacred garment from Adam that's passed down
yeah.
and as
And
we
and again, the
talked about.
last person we know had it was Joseph. And then you pair that with, okay, well, if he had these other heirlooms,
Mm.
the brass plates and the sword, we
Yeah.
know where those went.
Hmm.
It stands to reason that the garment would go there too.
That's really interesting, Joseph. That's a good one. That needs a whole write-up, is what you needed. A whole
Again, like I could be totally off my rocker, like full
No,
on
you
heretic,
know
I don't
what? No,
know,
it's
but
fun.
it makes
You know,
sense.
it is fun to do that because uh, unless you're willing to at least try to make some of these kinds of connections, you're probably not studying very deeply. It doesn't like it's like you said, it doesn't mean you're right, but it's an interesting connection and it's something to think about. So that's really cool. That's really cool. Man.
So, so when I stop looking at like the Book of Mormon, especially as a story, and I look at it as these are people with their own motivations and reasons why they're doing things and their own connections and things. What am I missing that isn't explicitly stated?
Hmm.
Right? Like I've said this before with other people, but like you look at Laman and Lemuel and Nephi and their relationship. Well, like they're like Laman and Lemuel are the biggest jerks ever, and Nephi is just like the perfect guy. And you're like, wait
Right.
a minute, Nephi's writing this, and he's trying to justify how his brothers shouldn't be the ones to have the authority, the control, and the leadership and all that kind of stuff. That it should be Nephi. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's the reason he's going to kind of show himself in his best light, and how his brothers are kind of jerks and they don't deserve to be leading the family and all that kind of stuff. So, like, there's little pieces like that, like, oh yeah, well, of course, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
you have to start seeing them as real people with their own motivations
Well,
and all that.
it's interesting you point that out. One thing that um what was that? It's Grant Hardy's The Annotated Book of Mormon that
Mhm.
that was published with Oxford. I don't know if you have that. If you don't, I highly recommend it. But
Okay.
one thing that he points out is um he distinguishes in the early chapters of Nephi the difference between sacrifices and burnt offerings.
Hmm.
That one is done for Thanksgiving and one is done for atonement specifically. And when Nephi and Laman and Lemuel come back with the plates after Nephi has killed Laban, first of all, we don't get to hear Lehi's reaction to the death of Laban, and they offer sacrifices and burnt offerings, which means they're offering they make an offering for atonement. It doesn't specify what they're atoning for. Maybe it's Laman and Lemuel's rebellion, but we don't know what Lehi thought when he found out his son had to, take Laban's head to to
Yeah.
to complete the mission. Um, so that's something that has always kind of struck me is there is some interesting kind of like gaps in the story, because we're only getting a piece of it. We're getting it from Nephi's point of view, not Lehi's point of view, which I don't think. I'm not saying at all that I think that Nephi is an untrustworthy worthy
No, of
narrator
course.
in any sense. I think he's the prophet, he's the king, I do think he's chosen, but there's some interesting things happening. The other interesting thing that he points out that I didn't quite consider was when Laman and his brothers, when Laman, Lemuel, and his brothers, when they cast lots, to decide who's going to go. That is a casting lots is a very particular ancient Israelite practice to divine the will of God. They're not flipping a coin and thinking this is going to be chance. They are doing something that the whatever it lies on, that's the will of God.
Hmm.
And who does it land on? Layman.
Hmm.
So to the brothers, to all the brothers there, God chose Layman to try first. Of course, he fails and he runs away and he gives up. And then Nephi steps up.
Hmm.
There's these interesting things that um, can just fly right over our heads if we're not actually taking it seriously as an ancient text and put it back into its ancient context, you know?
Absolutely. And that's kind of a microcosm of the relationship between, Nephi and Laman. Like Laman should have stepped up and taken the responsibility, and he should have been the guy,
Yeah. It's
but
kind
he
of
didn't.
interesting because it's like in their context, they're like, that's Layman would have been like, okay, God chose me. This is my chance to be the leader, right? And then we see how it plays out. But I found that interesting. But there's so much in the Book of Mormon that points to its ancient origin. That when you take that seriously, it's like this is how actual biblical scholarship can actually help you understand the Book of Mormon. Because I didn't understand what casting lots was. I didn't understand what they were doing. I thought of it as a game of chance or as like a voting system. That's not what it is at all. I mean, they cast lots to divine the will of God to who would work in the temple, to divide land, all kinds of things, but it's all over the Old Testament and in
Well,
once in the New Testament.
yeah, I was going to say, even in the news, isn't that how they determined the replacement?
How they determine that's how they choose Matthias. That's how they choose Matthias. That they still, even in the New Testament times, divine the will of God using the practice of casting lots. And they had different versions of that, but they understood it as God's going to speak to us using these common items. I mean, I don't think
Kind
of
of like a
quantum
Urim and
physics
Thummim
like
in a
that,
way, but
but I don't, there's this is why I'm like the only difference between magic and priesthood is who the power comes from. When it comes from the power of God, when it's done by the power of God of Israel and faith in God or in faith in Jesus Christ, it's priesthood. And when it's done through other means, they consider it magic. You know,
mhm.
but either way, there's a supernatural worldview here.
Yeah.
So
And it's about who do we look to as our source of authority, of power, of information. If we're looking to God and expecting this is how God's going to speak to me, that's one thing versus I'm going to look for some other source.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the authors that I really dug into that, man, really blew me away was Michael Heiser's The Unseen Realm. If you haven't checked that out, man,
Yeah.
I highly recommend that one.
Okay.
He really is, he's really good at just like, hey, you're actually glossing over this whole section because you just don't understand it. You're just so removed from the culture and from how they practice their religion that it just flies right over your head and you think they're just like rolling some dice or something. But anyways, it's kind of got me off on a tangent there. But I love that. I love that theory. And there you go. There's an episode for your channel right there. Um, Now I want to go back to your personal story here for a second.
Sure.
So you're on your mission. You get back from your mission. What was your faith journey like? Were you like solid from then on, or was there some give and take there? How do you feel about it? Whatever
It's a
your
good question. Yeah. So how do I even answer that? I wouldn't say I was like super solid necessarily. Like I knew enough that like, yeah, the church is true, so to speak, which I don't even like that terminology necessarily, but like, okay, I'm going to be this is the one answer.
Mhm.
But the real question was, okay, how much of that is going to influence my life, right? And it seems like, well, if you figure out, well, here's the true path, just go on it. No, it's not that simple, right?
Right. No.
Um, but I had looked into the military a lot before my mission. I even had some Marine recruiters try to get me to sign up and stuff before my mission with a deferral and stuff. So it was only a couple of months after I got back that I ended up enlisting in the Army as
Really?
a reservist. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I, my mission president recommended against the big life changes so soon after the mission, and I would
Uh-huh.
tend to agree that like that's probably not the best way to go about it. But yeah, I joined, and I was in a like deferred entry or delayed entry program.
How
Um,
long did you wait? Did,
it was almost a year. So here's the fun part. Since my reserve unit was close, I could go drill with them and stuff like before I even went to basic training yet, and that
yeah.
was super awkward because I had no idea what was going on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I had to
Um,
do the same thing. For
so I
you.
so I was to report to basic training in October 2001.
Mhm.
So literally the month after 9/11.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when that went down, I was like, oh man, what did I sign up for? Like, what am I getting into? Oh man. And so, going through basic,
Amazing things.
yeah, all the drill sergeants are like, guess what? Guess where we're going? Like, there's no question about this. All you guys are deploying, like it's gonna happen super fast, and they weren't wrong, whatever. Um, it was interesting. Partway through, I want to say it was basic. I went over like Christmas, and so we actually got this like break from basic, which I actually don't agree with it. We should have just stayed there and
Yeah.
finished it up or whatever. But I
Yeah.
got to go visit my father, and we visited Nauvoo together
Oh,
uh,
wow.
as
That's,
the temple was still being constructed.
yeah.
And interesting thing happened there. So if I'm going on too many tangents, but
You're not.
um, the the last area I served in my mission, um, one of the members of the ward there did work for the church as far as voice acting. He
Mhm.
had a wonderful musical voice, really cool. And before I left my mission, he goes, "Hey, elders, guess what? I got something cool to show you." And he showed us this like unreleased copy of the Testaments that he
Yeah.
was doing voice acting for. Like we had no idea, this was even being worked on or whatever. And was like, "This is so cool." And so he was doing voice acting for that. Um, since then, I am quite certain I have heard his voice in different areas
Hmm.
of my life. So, for example, leaving the mission, we went through Tokyo, and people I was traveling with, like, let's do a session in the temple. And so we had like the headset, and we had, one ear was listening to English, and one ear was listening to Japanese.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am quite sure his voice is in the temple. And man, does it hit different when you recognize the voice of God.
Really. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I was in Nauvoo, we were checking out like there was a Christus statue there in the visitor center, and my dad like asked one of the people, "Hey, do you have this in Japanese?" Like flip that on,
Uh-huh.
like man, I'm pretty sure that's the guy. Like I know this guy. And again, it's like when you're hearing this voice that represents divinity, and it
Mhm.
sounds familiar, like
Yeah.
I know this person, it just hits different.
Really.
Like like when I imagine like when my mortal journey is over and I go up and I meet God, like his voice is going to sound familiar to
Mm.
me. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like I know who this is. This isn't a mystery to me. Um, like that familiarity, that familial bond, like that's going to be there. And like we don't even know, like I don't think we appreciate what that's going to be like. If I
Right.
can say that.
For sure. Totally. Man,
So
tell you what, boot camp for me, I mean, I call it the anti-MTC.
that's fair.
I think it's funny that's like that you went pretty close after the mission because that's a really drastic change. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very, very different environment. Well, how was that for you, just like getting into military life?
It's very different, like you said. I remember having a number of like different gospel conversations with different people that were going through like basic and AIT with me and everything. And I remember one of the guys I was serving with was like a Satanist, self-proclaimed Satanist, and okay, let's talk about that. Like that's really interesting, whatever. And um, had a lot of fun, made a lot of good relationships and stuff, but definitely different environment. I distinctly remember people being like really homesick and stuff like that. I'm like, this is nothing. I got this. Like, this is no problem. So a lot of the rules and everything, when someone's looking over your back, looking over your shoulder, that's one thing. But on your mission, like you're out on your own. You're expected to do stuff and follow the rules and everything without even anyone watching over you. So I'm like,
You're right.
what difference does this to me? Um, so my specialty in the Army is psychological operations, or often referred to as psyop,
Mhm.
which is basically psychological warfare.
Wow.
Um, and it's in a weird way kind of like missionary work. Like it's about influence, it's about communication, it's about um, how do I make the right impact on this group of people or this individual. So I feel like a lot of the things that the PSYOP community is looking for, I've learned a lot of that on my mission already.
What's the
Um,
school like for that?
it's pretty intense. So I went to the JFK Special Warfare Center in Fort Bragg, and
Wow.
like it's like a lot of like like you're diving into like, okay, how do I assess this target audience, and how do I figure out what they want, what they need, and how can I leverage that to get the kind of response that I'm looking for. And while there is deception within psychological operations, I actually look at that as like the the less effective method.
Mm.
So if, for example, if I'm communicating with you and I want to have influence, if I tell you a lie, if I'm deceptive with you, I have to assume that eventually you can figure it out. Especially in this kind of age of technology and information, truth's going to come out eventually. Even if it isn't, I should expect that it will.
Right.
Okay? Once you figure out that I have deceived you, that I've lied to you, what happens to my reputation with you?
Yeah, you lose ground with me for sure. Yeah.
Now, when I tell you something, you're not going to believe me.
Yeah.
I got to build trust back all over again. So deception or dishonesty is a short-term risk. Like I'm trying to get this short-term gain and I'm risking long-term influence over that.
Mm.
And to me, that just isn't worth it.
Yeah.
So whereas if I tell you the truth, what can you say against the truth? You can
Right.
try to deny it or something, but again, if I'm assuming it eventually comes out that that's the truth, I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about trying to keep it covered or what's going to happen or whatever. So again, I kind of developed this little motto of the truth is a weapon against which there is no adequate defense.
Mm.
Right. So my
Explain that
policy is like
a little more.
speak the truth.
What do you
You
mean?
know,
Like, so how does that apply? How does that apply to our lives? And how does that apply to your career field and your daily life as a Latter-day Saint?
a lot of life is about relationships, and I would even argue that looking at all the different things that we can take with us after our mortal journey, like clothing isn't one of them, like my house, whatever, the car, whatever, all this material stuff is not going to persist.
Mhm.
My knowledge will persist and my relationships will persist. Right. So there's eternal consequence to the relationships that I build. And those are largely due to the way that I communicate with people.
Mm.
So if I want to have this eternal bond, this eternal relationship with somebody, even if it's not like a ceiling relationship necessarily, but I want to have this kind of relationship, then it behooves me to speak honestly,
Mhm.
right? To deal with the truth. Everything else is just short-term gain. And that a lot of life is trying to figure out, how do I deny the short-term gain to get the long-term gain, to get the eternal gain? That's what I'm after.
Mm. That
And
makes
and honesty has a big, big, big piece to play in that.
so coming from that background and that kind of really kind of intense training, and how long were you in that, by the way? How long were you in that field?
8 years. And so again, I was a reservist, which meant that I had to have a civilian job at the same time. Um, Early on, I worked for my stepfather, who worked in the auto industry doing auto restoration, detailing, show prep, storage, that kind of stuff. I'm an auto enthusiast for sure. And
Okay.
so I got to see a lot of cool vehicles like, hey, this is one of five, or whatever in the world. Really cool stuff like that. But whereas my stepfather, and I love him dearly, like he is an artist. Like he can do some amazing stuff with cars, like turn this junk heap, rust bucket into something that's worthy of winning a show or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm more of a gearhead, like that just wasn't my calling, you know. So I ended up looking for work and everything, and through some connections that I had, ended up working for a large software company doing physical security.
Okay.
And they were like, "Hey, I don't care if you're in the special operations, you know, unit or whatever. You got to go through all the training and everything, just like anybody else, and start at the bottom." I said, "Okay, whatever, you know, I'll do that." So I started at the bottom and worked my way up, and eventually was doing executive protection work for that company, dealing with like the CEO, their um, senior leadership team, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Did all sorts of crazy stuff in that space. Um, but it wasn't really for me either in a lot of ways. I ended up getting laid off, and that was kind of a financial kind of thing where they said, "Hey, we got this budget shortfall." I was the highest paid person on the team. They're like, "Bye, great work, but we'll do whatever without you." Okay, and that was actually a really hard time in my life. My wife was a stay-at-home mom at the time. We had our daughter,
Mhm.
and neither of us had a job.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't have a degree at the time. Uh, I got this great, James Bond, super cool, high status job. And I'm like, well, I don't even do anything else. So I had some college classes and stuff, but never really finished. So when I went to apply for jobs, they'd say, "Oh, you're way overqualified for this based on your experience. Like, we're not going to hire you because we're concerned you're going to get a different job a week from now."
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, how about the another job, like the manager job of this? Well, for that one, we're looking for someone with a degree,
Hmm.
regardless of your experience. And so I was kind of caught in this weird space of like
Yeah.
I can't undo or forget the experience that I had. I had to just move forward.
Right.
So at the time, I was the first counselor in a bishopric in my ward, and we were just learning about this neat new educational program called Pathway. And so right at this time where I'm like, I need to find a way to get back on the horse and get back into education, this thing fell in my lap, and I said, "This is for me," you
Yeah.
know, like really. So I got in pretty early in that program, and it was just what I needed.
You did your
Uh,
right pathway.
I did. Mhm.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with that program, but it's amazing. At least at the time, we had to
awesome.
do so many classes. So BYU Idaho, at least at the time, I'm not sure if they changed since then, had a requirement you had to have spend so much time on campus. And so what they would do is have these in-person meetings with some like volunteer, missionary kind of folks for education, and that would count as your campus on campus requirement.
Mhm.
I was able to meet that requirement. And then when I matriculated into kind of just the normal BYU Idaho, I was the same as anybody else, get the same kind of degree, whatever, but I haven't set foot on BYU Idaho campus ever. But I got a degree in business management with a focus on entrepreneur management.
Awesome.
It was great. And then I got landed a nice job at another pretty big software, hmm, let's say a pretty big company doing security work for them. They had a global security operations center. I was working in that for a while. So I had a nice bachelor's degree and stuff, and then we decided to move from the Washington, Seattle area to Phoenix to be closer to family, that kind of stuff. And I had read this book called Good to Great, which is a fun business book. If you haven't read that one, it's a good one. And it talks about this concept of, hey, if you're a leader of a large company and you're trying to hire people for your executive team, and you find somebody and they'd be a great fit for your team, but they're not a great fit for the position you're hiring for, find a way to hire them anyway. And I'm oversimplifying it. They use
Sure.
the term like get them on the bus, then eventually you'll find them the right seat on the bus.
Mhm.
And so I kind of took that and said, well, maybe I should be looking for the right bus, the right company, rather than trying to find the exact right job. I want to find the right company for me that I want to stick with for a long time, long term, and then eventually I'll find the right job within that company. And I joined, so I was hired into a large financial services company. I'll keep it vague, but people can look me up and figure it out if they want to, whatever.
Oh,
But
good.
I'll keep it vague for this video. And I've been working for them ever since. Kind of started at the bottom and worked my way up, and I've got a fantastic job where I'm a product manager on the digital side of things. So I'm kind of this. I see myself as like an architect of software stuff. Hey, we
Yeah.
need something built, and I put down the blueprints of what that's going to look like, and then I hand it over to a software development team, and they build it. Come back to me and say, "Is this what you want?" And I said, "Yeah, great job. Here's the next thing I want." But yeah, love the company I work for, love my job and everything. It's my team's amazing, love it. But it definitely was a process getting here.
What a cool story. And I think it's cool that you ended up doing it through BYU Pathway. So how long did you do BYU Pathway before you went into BYU Idaho?
So I want to say it was like 3 classes, if I remember right, that I
Yeah.
had to take before I could just matriculate and be a normal student. Um, and then, oh, by the way, then with my current employer,
Mhm.
when I got hired by them, they said, "Hey, we got these great educational benefits, and they're available to you day one." And
Nice.
me, being used to being undereducated, thought to myself, well, if this is available to everybody, everyone's going to have advanced degrees and that kind of stuff. If I want to advance, I should jump into this right away. So while I was still in their training program, I jumped into a dual master's educational program and then eventually got to 2 degrees, one an MBA and then a Master of Science in Leadership degree. So kind of went from being undereducated to being maybe overeducated or something, but it's
Hey, I
quite
think
quite a turnaround.
one is better than the other, though.
Yeah, right, right.
So, I think you're good. I have a question too.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about this, but so you have this background in psyops, whatever you want to call it, right? And so, I mean, not that I know a whole lot about what that exactly that entails, but getting some of what you're saying, what's it like as a Latter-day Saint when you see a lot of these anti-Mormon videos? What's it like? Because I mean, I'm not saying you're like a lie detector or anything, but you have training um, on how to deceive and how to detect deception, I imagine. Does that play a role in
Yeah.
and how you encounter some of this crazy stuff that's out there these days?
So in a very general sense, I'll watch advertisements, on TV and think to myself, who's their target audience? Like, who are they trying to reach for this ad? And of course, like if it's an ad, it's easy. They just want you to buy their product or service, right? That's easy. But a lot of it starts with who is your audience, and then what are you trying to get them to do?
Mhm.
So a lot of stuff I can see like, okay, this is just misrepresentation of doctrine, or this is really attacking the culture that exists within the church, which isn't the church itself, or that kind of thing. So there's a lot of that I can diagnose fairly easily, but I don't know. I expect that most people can, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But then there's how do I say this? Most of the military, to put it in a very, very simplistic way, is all about a subtraction equation. If I have one enemy minus one enemy, I don't have any more enemies left, right? Like
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. Like, how do I get rid of these enemies, right?
math,
But
but I get that.
the psyop approach is different.
Mhm.
That's like, well, how do I turn this enemy into an ally?
Mm.
Or at least make them neutral, or that kind of thing. It's a different equation altogether. So sometimes when I look at stuff, um, I have a different approach. But let me say this too. When I deployed to Iraq, so I was in Iraq for OF1, um, mostly the northwestern, kind of sector of Iraq. Basically, anywhere along the Euphrates, I've been there, from Baghdad to Syria, everywhere in between. Whereas a lot of people on deployment, for one reason or another, learn to hate the people that they were interacting with to some extent. Other than like, this is a different group, they're so different from me, and they're all messed up, and here's why or whatever. I learned to love them, and a lot of that I credit to my mission. Again, here's a group of people that is very culturally different and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but they're still humans. They're still part of my family, and they're people, and they have their own stories. And how do I learn to love them?
Mhm.
So sometimes when I look at videos, like there's one that both of us have watched, um, I can look at it and say, here's where this guy's wrong.
Mhm.
You know, in this particular video we're talking about, I don't remember the title of it. I don't know if you do or
The dark side of my Mormon mission or something
yeah,
like that. And
yeah.
this thing had like 145,000 views in just a few days. That's what we're up against. And I sent it to you because you had told me about, some of your background. And I was like, what do you think of this? Like, what's going on here behind the scenes?
So I'll give you my take. It's probably going to be very different than what you think I'm going to say, but
Go for it.
here we go.
Yeah.
So I can attack this and say, here's why this guy's wrong. Here's why he's misrepresenting the church and all that kind of stuff, and that can be true, right? Um, but I think there's a deeper story behind this, right? Here, and I think the guy's name was Kevin. Does that sound right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, let's assume so. So here's Kevin that has this traumatic experience on his mission. He's sent to this area of Russia or whatever it was, Ukraine or something. Uh,
Crazy experiences.
yeah, and he like sees someone get murdered,
Yeah.
and totally traumatic kind of experience, and that has an impact on him.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, it does, right? And for him, it's a very negative impact. So when he gets home, he's trying to unpack all this stuff, and what do I think about this? And the church was telling me that this is what I'm supposed to do, and here's what I need to do to have this eternal family, and are they even right? And they did this to me and whatever. Okay, well, I've experienced trauma too. I'm not a stranger to that, right? Deployment stuff. Like I've been diagnosed with PTSD. It is what it is. Um, let me explain some terminology. A person can be fragile,
Hmm.
meaning when they go through a traumatic experience or a chaotic environment or whatever, if you're fragile, you tend to decrease, whether that's your physical or mental health, your production, whatever it is. If you're fragile, you break under that pressure. Okay. Then you take a step down the continuum to the middle. There's resiliency. This is like a spring. Someone pushes you down, you spring back up to right where you were before. Okay. So the resilient person, when faced with the traumatic experience, the negative environment, all that stuff, will stay stable. And that's a goal for a lot of people. How do I stay stable regardless of this environment, this negative environment I'm in? Then there's one step further, and that is often referred to as anti-fragile or anti-fragility. That's when you hit this negative traumatic experience, this chaotic environment, et cetera, but you turn around and you're better for it. You increase,
Hmm.
you become stronger, your mental toughness increases, and that kind of stuff. So from that lens, when I look at this person and their experience, which state were they in, in facing this traumatic experience? I would argue, from what I can tell, it seems like they're in the fragile state.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this kind of reaction of this decrease, and it seems like Kevin is still trying to figure it out. He's still dealing with that trauma and stuff, decades later or whatever. And I feel sorry for the guy, right? Like here's a like I wouldn't want that anybody to experience that. But when I think about how did I deal with my traumatic experiences and how did I try to bounce back from that and grow from that, Christ and the atonement played a pivotal role in
Hmm.
my recovery and
Right.
in my what a lot of people call post-traumatic growth,
Hmm.
right? So I'm
Yep.
like, here's this huge blessing that I received, and now I'm on the other side of that, you know, pass through the light at the end of the tunnel and stuff. I'm like, I feel great. Like this is now a blessing to me. Like the traumatic experiences that I had, now I can use as a tool to have empathy for other people, to see red flags and be an advocate for mental health and all this kind of stuff. And here's this guy that seemed to shun the very thing that could have helped him.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
I totally agree with that.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from is like, um, okay, I'm going to take a step back again. Something that had a big impact on me in my perspective was President Hinckley on the Larry King show, right? Larry King Live.
Hmm.
And this was at like this particular time, because I think he was on multiple times. This was like at this height of the Bill Clinton scandal kind of stuff. And Larry King says, okay, you're like and I'm paraphrasing totally, right? Um, you're this global leader of this global church and um, really high standards of living and all this stuff. What do you think about Bill Clinton? And I thought to myself, oh man, Hinckley's going to give it to him, right? He's going to like no uncertain terms. He's like, this guy's doing all this stuff. He's going to call him out. Like if anybody is supposed to be doing that, it's Hinckley, right? President of the church and everything. He didn't do that at all. He said, I feel sorry for him. Here's a person with this great capability and amazing um, ability. And it seems like he's going through some really hard times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, wait, what? Like, totally blew my mind. Very different approach than what I was expecting. He didn't come after him to say, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to show what people not to do. He used that as an opportunity to show empathy,
Hmm.
right? So when I'm watching this video and seeing this guy going through this horrible stuff, and like he's obviously in pain, as far as I can tell. Okay, well, we can approach him and tell him he's wrong, or we can approach him and say, "Hey, man,
Hmm.
I really feel, bad for your situation. I'd love to help you out. Um, what worked for me was leaning into Jesus Christ, not leaning away from him.
Right.
You know, and if other people are going through that same kind of or similar kind of situation, maybe you should try leaning into Christ and see if that can help you through that. It sure worked for me. You know, I think that might be the better message.
Yeah.
So, so when I'm kind of jumping forward again, looking at, okay, here I am wanting to make a difference, wanting to make a contribution, to show they're not all a bunch of, well, maybe I'm a weirdo. I don't know, a bunch of weirdos in the church or whatever, heretics or whatnot. Is it apologetics that I want to lean into? Like, I love that stuff, but maybe I've got a different approach that would even be more helpful
Hmm.
to, like, how do I de-escalate? How do I, again, show empathy and show care and say, hey, maybe it isn't about what we think we're talking about. Maybe there's a different element here that we can lean into and find a way so that we can, all, heal together.
Sure. I don't disagree with you. I'm all for the healing, but
Yeah, hit me with it. Yeah. But
I'm gonna hit you with the but. He decided he's putting 100% of the darn blame on the church.
well, yeah.
And I can't help seeing him cry in the forest on camera, knowing that he had to set that camera up,
Oh,
check, make
it's
sure
totally manipulative.
and
Totally.
go, and then make himself cry on camera. And I believe that he went through something traumatic. I believe his story
Oh,
that he had a really rough mission. And I actually do say this, uh, missions, they're just not for everybody. If you're not ready for a mission, you might not be able to handle that. I know people who have had hard times and just had to come home. They just can't take it. And here's the thing. So you're talking about being fragile or anti-fragile, right? But it's really
mhm.
hard to tell until you go.
It
It's
is.
really hard to tell. Okay, I went to Afghanistan, and I went to Afghanistan in 2012. And one of the people that I went with, the very first time after we were hit with some mortars, we were just the normal run-of-the-mill indirect mortar fire. Okay,
Yeah,
got
been there.
lost it. I mean, had a nervous breakdown. And I don't know what was the difference between him and the rest of us, other than that's what happened to him. That's how he reacted to it. Couldn't take it, had to send him home. I mean, complete like shaking all the time. It wasn't a pretty thing. And once people are aware that there are these different states of being, fragile or anti-fragile, how do you prepare? How do you prepare yourself so that when the trauma comes, because it will, that you can be the strong person that your family can rely on?
Yeah. You start small. Like that's the easiest way to say it is you don't wait for this big, overwhelming traumatic experience. Start leaning into like growing from unforeseen obstacles, right?
Mm.
If your whole MO, the way you operate is when something wrong, bad happens, I'm going to go blame it on somebody else, which is a lot of what's happening in that video, right? Like when you're an adult, make adult decisions.
Mhm.
Like take ownership of your decisions, right? And then say, okay, if it didn't happen the way I thought it did, why? What can I do to have a better result? Right. And again, start small, whether that's on like a sports team or, in your childhood, start leaning into this. Okay, things didn't work out the way I wanted to. I'm not going to blame somebody else. I'm just going to say, okay, how can I take ownership of this? How can I make it better? How can I grow from this? That's the way forward. And then you build on that. So when the big things happen, you already have that habit set together. So again,
Yeah.
in that video, a lot of what I see is like playing the victim, blaming it like, okay, well, like I joined the military. I went through some traumatic stuff, whatever, but who do I blame the military for that?
Right.
Do I even blame the people who were trying to kill me? I could, but how helpful is that to me, right? What bearing does that have on my life? Like
Yeah.
when I take ownership and say, you know what, I'm going to attract that which occurs. I'm going to take ultimate ownership over what happens in my life and recognize that I live my life with some level of risk, right? I could get hit with a meteor, like whatever, but I'm not going to live in a bunker, for
Yeah.
my life. I'm not willing to do that. I will accept some amount of risk. And with that, comes my responsibility. That doesn't mean I'm inviting things to happen. That's not like I'm not like trying to blame the victim or that kind of stuff. It's just a matter of I'm taking responsibility for the good things that happen in my life and the bad things that happen.
Mhm.
I either made it happen or I let it happen.
I think, Joseph, that you're in a good position to have a lot of influence and a lot of really good things to teach Latter-day Saints about preparing for these types of events. And I want to lean into that a little bit because you did recently name your YouTube channel. What's the name of
Yes,
the channel?
the Antifragile Saint.
Fragile
Pretty,
Saint. I
pretty,
love it.
pretty on point, right?
So tell me what is, and I saw your introduction to it, but what is the plan for that? How do you want to go about it? Do you have an idea yet?
I do. So I'm trying to Well, when I came after it, it was okay, what can I offer that's
Mhm.
unique, that's maybe unserved, that kind of thing. What can I do to support the restored gospel and the culture and help other people and all that kind of stuff. And I might do some apologetics in there, maybe especially if I'm teaming up with somebody else. Like if you want to get together and review a video or something, let's do it, whatever, right? But I think the main thrust of the channel is going to be let's talk about mental health and leadership, especially, and then say if you have a religious framework,
Mhm.
how does that enhance those things, right? So,
Yes.
for example, anti-fragility, right? We can look at that and say, okay, here's how it works. Here's kind of the secular explanation. But then at the end, say, we're gonna put a little restored gospel twist on this thing and say, okay, isn't that kind of the purpose or one of the purposes of our mortal journey here?
Mhm.
Is like there's a lot of suffering, there's trauma and stuff, of course, right? That's all what we're experiencing in this life. Why is it like that?
Right.
Because God can use those for our good.
Yes.
We can get into that anti-fragile state, we can find the most opportunities for learning and growth within our mortal journey,
Hmm.
right? So I think a lot of the gospel is helping us learn to be in that state, in that, okay, if the trials come or whatever, my bow breaks and I've got to build a ship to cross, whatever, like I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to need God's help with that, but we're going to get through this thing and we're going to make it happen.
Yep.
So how do I get in that state and help other people get in that state? So again, I'm trying to make it inclusive enough so that people of all sorts of religious influences or atheism or whatever, it doesn't matter. Everyone can get something out of it. But if you're a believer in the restored gospel, there's gonna be a little nugget in there for you too. Like I might go over, hey, here's how to write a resume,
Yeah.
and hey, if you happen to serve a mission and you got this, kind of stuff, here's how you might want to tweak that for your resume or something like that. That's my thought of my approach. And then perhaps combining some interviews and things to say, hey, here's a leader in whatever space. Hey, how does your religious framework impact your leadership style? And
Mhm.
into that to say, leadership, for example, or mental health, these are areas where that religious foundation can really aid you in those areas. But if we talk about it like those don't exist, you're missing out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be really looking forward to the channel. I think, man, you're a really bright guy. It's very obvious. I love your comments, and just be prepared. You're going to be getting a lot of comments and YouTube, and your people will probably reach out to you. And I just would just say do the same, pass it along, and encourage others um to reach out, to share their testimony, to share their experiences, because I knew like the moment I talked to you, I was like, man, this guy could have a great YouTube channel. I would subscribe totally. And I think I'm gonna like your style because I have an after just listening to your introduction, you have a lot of experience writing, huh? You're a pretty good writer, aren't you?
So I would say between me and my wife's a much better writer. I did take a course through the VA on storytelling as a method of therapy, you know,
Yeah.
like a therapeutic kind of process. And I had written this story for a college class. Like right when I got back from deployment, I was like, okay, just jump back into some college courses again, whatever. And I was taking this writing class, and the assignment was, okay, write about something where you like got an award or a trophy or something. And I was like, well, I got this like Army Commendation Medal for this riot I helped like subdue or whatever. I guess I'll write about that. And I took kind of this approach to it. And when I had my draft, we all came together and said, okay, read each other's stuff and provide feedback on your teammates or whatever in class. And I'm reading somebody's like here's where I won the cross country event or whatever. And people read mine and went, what in the world? Like, I don't even know like how to process this kind of thing. So it was pretty deep, like right off the bat. And I decided to evaluate that and kind of flesh it out a little bit as a means of kind of this again therapeutic process for myself. But I also wanted to make this story into something that would spark conversation. So, for example, okay, so um, when I started going back to BYU, Idaho, and this is or through the Pathway program, there were some people in my class, and I had just was going through this storytelling course and stuff, and I had this impression that I should share this story the first time, with somebody with this random-ish kind of person. I didn't know them, from anybody else necessarily, whatever, with this person in my class. And I said, and I printed it out, and I came there and I was like, this is not going to go well. Like this is going to freak this person out or whatever. And I said, hey, I don't know why. I just feel impressed that I'm supposed to share this story with you. I wrote it myself. If you get a chance to read it, I'd love your feedback. Let me know what you think. And she said, okay, you know. And so the next week, I show up to class and she avoids me. Like, oh man, like, okay, that's not good, whatever. And it was maybe a couple weeks before she approached me and said, why did you share this with me? I said, I don't know. Just felt impressed to do so. She said, you don't know this, but my husband is is in the military, and we've been having a lot of communication problems with each other. And I read this and I shared it with him. And he came back to me and said, this is how I feel, this right here. Like, and that started this conversation between the two of them where they were able to heal a little bit and get past some of their conflicts and stuff. And I was like, that's exactly what I want out of this story is how do I spark those conversations, especially between veterans and civilians? When one says, hey, I'm having trouble articulating how I feel or what this was like or whatever, but it's kind of like this
Yeah.
in the story, or vice versa. Hey, someone's trying to tell me what it's like and I don't understand. This doesn't make sense to me. But hey, when I read this, now it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Um, I deliberately wrote the story in a way that is not really answering questions, it's asking questions.
Hmm.
So a lot of people, when they read it, will come back to me and say, how does it end? I said, that's my life. It hasn't ended yet. Like I'm still here. But the story, so it's called The Living Statue, and it's meant to be kind of this play on words and stuff. But like a statue is inherently not alive, like it's
Right.
dead, you know. And so if you're a living statue, you're kind of living in both worlds of being alive and not being alive,
Yeah.
which is a lot of how I felt,
Hmm.
coming through the trauma and that kind of stuff was, is there something that I'm missing that is required to be human?
Hmm.
Is there something wrong with me? Am I broken? And is the world broken? All this kind of stuff. And so I tried to end it to not answer those questions.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with like the lady or the tiger story,
Mm.
where it's like I try to leave it like that to say, I'm not telling you the answer. Like you need to go figure it out and start talking to people and figure out, what the answer is for a particular person or whatever. How were they able to resolve this in their life and that kind of thing. So again, that it's rather than people reading it and being, that was great, and I can move on with my life. It's like, whoa, that was wild.
Yeah.
I need to figure this out. I
Yeah.
just I need to start talking to people or whatever. So that was kind of the kind of multi purpose behind that story.
That's heavy, bro. That's heavy. You know what? I got a lot of family and friends in the military, and I think it's needed. So I think go for it. I think go for it. I'm going to be looking out for the Anti-Fragile Saint. I have already subscribed,
Well,
so
thank you.
I'm going to be I'm going to have my eye out on you, Joseph. And anytime you want, you can text me, you can call me, whatever you want to collaborate again. Let's do it. I've
I'd
had
love
a
to.
lot of fun just talking to you and talking to others. It's just so cool, just people reaching out, even though we're all in like different states and we're in different situations in our lives. Being able to reach out and kind of support each other and collaborate, because there's a lot of good work to do, and we need good people like you to do it, Joseph. So thank you for coming on the channel. Everybody out there, check out Joseph at the Anti-Fragile Saint. Give him a subscribe and be looking out, because there's going to be a lot of good things for him. Anything else you want to say, Joseph? I'll give you the last word.
Sure, I appreciate that. I have experienced too much to not be fully committed to the gospel, the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. Um, Sometimes people accuse us of following our feelings, and trying to determine the truth by our feelings. But I'm here to say that, at least for me, spiritual manifestations and emotional feelings are different,
Yeah,
right? That the spiritual manifestations hit you in a different way, right? And I've had enough of that, more than I deserve, right? Like how many signs, how many, manifestations do I need to be fully committed?
right.
Like one, really, like
Yeah,
anything past that's just like icing on the cake.
yeah,
Um, so I've had enough. Um, when I look for truth, I'm looking for something that is logical, something that makes sense to me. I'm looking for something that feels right. So that's the emotional piece, right? If someone's trying to sell me on something that I gotta like murder somebody for, I'm like, that's not gonna sit right with me. Whatever. It's gotta be logical. It's gotta feel right. And I gotta get that spiritual manifestation, to confirm that that's the truth. That's what the restored gospel has.
yeah,
It's so logically defensible, and there's so many things that feel right, from how we just help people have better lives and communities thrive better. Wherever the church goes, that community is going to be teaching people, to be better parts of the community. And I just can't get enough of it. Like the restored gospel is so cool. Like, and it's all about how do I just get closer to Jesus Christ and our Heavenly Father? Here's these great examples, and they're fully invested in my success. Like I really couldn't ask for anything more. And how do I just share that wonderful experience, this this revelation, with other people? And sometimes it's just planting seeds, sometimes it's more than that, but I'm here for it, and um, I,
that's
I just love it.
That's so awesome. Anytime you want to nerd out about the gospel, hit me
Do
up.
it.
We'll collaborate. Maybe you got some more theories to blow my mind. I'm gonna have to go think about that one for like a month. So thanks for that.
Oh, I
I
definitely
will
do.
appreciate it, Joseph. I'm gonna make sure that I'll put a link in the description for your channel, and hopefully people go subscribe. And I'm gonna be looking out for videos from you. But I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk soon. Okay?
Pleasure's mine. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you.